All right, Ce-Ce, hello. Thank you for taking some time to come on the Lehigh Valley with Love podcast. I'm glad to have you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to the conversation.
I just saw you in the news. I read the Morning Call article that just came out of you, and there's a picture on it. If nobody can see, I'll make sure that we link it in there. But it's a fantastic picture of you and another gentleman having words, regarding better renting practices in Allentown. So it's an exciting time for you, and it's an exciting time for Allentown. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But before we get into all of the politics stuff down the road, I want to learn a little bit more about you. And I read from your website, I know that you went to Cedar Crest College, but I want to learn more about, like, where did you come from? How did you initially maybe get started in politics? Were you even interested in politics, in the first place? So if you could kind of tell me the story of Ce-Ce, where did you grow up and eventually get to where we are now?
Yeah, sure. So politics was the last thing I ever thought I would be involved in. I remember, I think it was like in 8th or 9th grade. I sat down with a guidance counselor and she told me to go to cosmetology school. That didn't quite work out. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. and Maryland area. Okay. I say that because I lived in small towns. I lived in D.C. for a little bit. And then I even lived in West Virginia, in Martinsburg, West Virginia for a while. So I moved around in my high school years, elementary school years. I pretty much was in Maryland, Hagerstown, Maryland. Hagerstown, Maryland is a really interesting place, especially for a biracial person like myself. My mom is white, my dad is Jamaican. Hagerstown, Maryland back then was predominantly Caucasian. And then I lived in what was known as the Black neighborhood. And as you can see, I'm fairly light-skinned. And so from a really early age, I really learned the kind of social dynamics of race, and having a mother who is white, being really poor. I also learned how, opportunity is not always available to everyone based on your socioeconomic status. Sure. Like I was involved in situations where because of my lack of income versus someone else's wealth, I was looked at as less than, and I knew that at the age of 6. I felt that at the age of 6. Kids understand. Kids know more than what we give them credit for. Yeah. So I mean, I saw really, really early on how you would go from one block to another block, and it would be an entirely different world, and how there would be people sleeping outside of new office buildings. And so I noticed that. I always consider myself a pretty perceptive person, even as a kid. And I guess, what do they call them? Old souls. I mean, I know you hear a lot of people say, oh yeah, I didn't know we were poor. I knew we were poor. It was, but growing up, I wouldn't change a thing, because when you grow up and you've never had anything, it teaches you to fight for everything. And it teaches you that you're not entitled to anything. That
I think you appreciate, I don't want to speak for anybody, but there is an appreciation too, when you know of not having something to then have it, you appreciate it sometimes maybe a little more.
Oh yeah. So look, I purchased a home a couple years ago, and every time when I walk in that home and I have a fridge that's full, I have lights that are on, I have heat that works, I have gas in my car, I'm beyond thankful, and sometimes I'm just perplexed. Like, how is this my life? Coming from where I come from, some of the struggles I've had even in my adult years, the fact that I now live a life that is pretty comfortable. My bills are paid. I can I can, splurge a little bit on a Friday with eating out. I mean, compared to how I grew up, like my mom and I, we were just talking about it the other night where, the only time you really had like a real meal was Thanksgiving, and that Thanksgiving and Christmas, I should say. And that was because of the Salvation Army and charity. And then now here we are planning, hey, do you want to go to Panera or do you want to go to Starbucks? Like,
Sure.
Well,
how do you get there then? What is that from Hagerstown to Allentown? Connect those dots. How did you make that trip?
Yeah, so I didn't intend to go to college. It just kind of happened. I didn't know what else to do when I graduated. It's not like I had my eyes on college for my entire high school career.
Do you think Cedar Crest College had like a good cosmetology program?
That's the one thing they were lacking.
They probably would if they had one, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I mean they definitely trained women to come up with leadership skills and to go at issues full force. Cosmetology, not so much. Nursing, education, forensic science, yes. So I ended up at Cedar Crest College just because I went to I visited the campus. It felt right. It was a small campus. I liked all the trees.
Was that the first time that you were ever in the area, like the Lehigh Valley, Allentown area? Interesting. All right, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I had never heard of Allentown, never heard of the Lehigh Valley. That was my first time on a college campus. It felt right. And I decided to attend. My major was elementary education. I knew I wanted to be a teacher just because I know the role, even though I didn't have these grand aspirations of attending college, I at least knew the value of an education. Because of my mom, her lack of education, she understood what that meant for her life. So she instilled in me the value of an education. And so I knew I wanted to give back. I knew I wanted to hopefully inspire other young people with similar situations as what I came from. So I went to Cedar Crest. I studied more than I ever studied in high school, graduated a pretty decent GPA, and I started volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club at 13th and Turner, which really introduced me to the community of Allentown. And as I reflect on my college years, I really spent more time in Allentown, like going on 7th Street and getting to know some of the different restaurants there. So we're talking about like back in 2004. And I spent more time in Allentown than what I did on the campus because I felt more at home in Allentown than I necessarily did on campus.
That's interesting. How did you do that? What did you make the decision, I'm going to go volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club, and then you met people that way? Is that kind of how it worked?
So actually I had work study through America Reads. America Reads, most of the people in America Reads were elementary education or secondary education majors. And so that's how I got introduced to the Boys and Girls Club. And then I fell in love with the Boys and Girls Club there. As a kid, I attended the Boys and Girls Club, learned how to dribble a ball, got to go swimming and things like that. So I was already familiar with the organization, but I fell in love with the Allentown Boys and Girls Club. And I started not through my work study, but volunteering. I started a science program, hands-on science, because in my college classes I was learning about kinesthetic learning, and so I thought, well, that's what these kids need. They need kinesthetic learning. So I started a little science club. We'd make slime. We would put gumdrops together to form like domes and things like that. And then when I graduated from Cedar Crest with my degree, my first actual job was at the Boys and Girls Club as an outreach director over in Cumberland Gardens in the public housing. And then I started taking kids on college tours because, again, my first time on a college campus was Cedar Crest, and I didn't want that to happen for other kids. I grew up in public housing. So I really felt a connection with these young people who were also growing up in public housing. And
I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I was just gonna say, like, Allentown is the whole Lehigh Valley, really. You have Cedar Crest there, Muhlenberg, El Tri-C. There are a lot of opportunities. I would think to be able to have some of the more inner city kids to have a chance to get on a college campus, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, if there are pathways and kind of pipes to go through, yes, there are, but organically it won't happen. If there are organizations, if there are mentors to connect the college to the student, then yes. But to rely on it organically, the young person just magically appearing on El Tri-C's campus next though, no. But to connect them, yes.
Because you could be a 15-year-old kid literally living next to campus on Muhlenberg College, and there really isn't a relationship there, by itself. I understand what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was part of my goal as a young person. I don't know what, like 22 years old, something like that. And then I was able to land a teaching job. I started teaching at the Children's Home of Easton. The Children's Home is a facility for young people who, for various reasons, just can't stay at home, or some of them were released from juvenile facilities, and it was almost like a step down a place for them to live, where after getting released from the detention center, they couldn't quite go home. So they would stay at the children's home for some time. So I taught there. That was awesome. I got to make my own curriculum. I got to embed Black history into every single thing I taught. I got to embed the very crucial female leaders into everything I taught. Most of the young people I worked with were young men, so I loved having the ability to really teach from more of like a feminist kind of standpoint, and turn some of those young men into feminists, and realize, like, most of the young men were raised by single moms, so they almost had like this natural inclination to be a feminist, just didn't know it. So it was great to teach the young men who, up until being in my class, many of them had missed 30, 90, even 120 days of school. They had never like read a book from cover to cover. And they did in my class because I made it fun. I made it relatable. I picked books that they could actually understand and relate with. And it was awesome. So that's really who I am. Yes, I'm involved in politics and I'm a politician, but in terms of like the core of me, I'm an educator. I'm a community organizer. I started organizing, I'd say, in 2011 in Allentown around the issues of affordable housing and jobs for Allentown residents. And that's who I am at the core.
Because this is always fascinating to me, and I'm learning more and more about politics as we go, but to put yourself in it is a huge commitment. I mean, not only are you committing your time and effort, but you're putting yourself out in public. It's just a lot. When did you decide? I guess your first foray, tell me if I'm wrong, but was to run for school board, correct? For Allentown School Board.
Right.
When did you make that decision? When did it say to you, "Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and do this"?
Yeah, so I was at the Boys and Girls Club, working / volunteering, and there was a young lady, 16 years old, and she had dropped out. She dropped out of high school, and she came into the Boys and Girls Club. She was just distraught, and about a week or two went by, and there was no effort from the school district to like bring her back. And I didn't understand that. I mean, she was a really nice young lady. She was just going through a lot in life at that time. Who isn't going through a lot at the age of 17? Sure. And I just went on to handy dandy Google, and I Googled high school dropouts, and it turns out it was a crisis. And it turns out that there's a thing called a school board that can write a thing called a resolution, that can pass things called policies, that can deal with issues like dropouts. I had no idea what a school board was.
Really? You put it in and said, okay, this makes sense to me.
I just Googled it. I saw that I knew that there was a problem. And then I saw that there was a solution. And by that time, I had already finished up volunteering on Obama's campaign. And Obama said, be the change you wish to see in this world. I knew something needed to change.
Well,
so
it's just like you see so many people who are like, yep, I know the solution is to, well, maybe the solution, but the next step is to go to a meeting. You know, I could go to a meeting and be heard, but nobody wants to do that. They just want to complain on Facebook. It's the fun thing you do. It's amazing that you just said, okay. And then what? You then learn more about the process of running. Because of course you have to, you know, get on the ballot and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. So once I found out what a school board was, then I researched how do you get on one. I found out that you needed to get signatures on a petition. I got myself and like 2 friends to go around and get signatures. I got enough and I got on the ballot. And then because I had volunteered on Obama's campaign, all I knew was to door knock. So that's what I did. I got little business cards, like black and white business cards printed up. I walked around and I talked with a bunch of people and just told them my story, told them why I wanted to be on the school board. I was 25 years old at the time, and I didn't think I had a chance, but people trusted me and they elected me.
That's crazy. So, and how long ago was that when you were first elected?
Yeah, so that was 2011. That was 2011.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what, I mean, I probably could talk for hours being on the school board, especially in Allentown. But what then from that generates this next step into going from school board to city council? Was there something more that you wanted to do that you couldn't do from the school board position, or what was that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I started looking at our data and really seeing that issues of absenteeism and tardyism and a transiency rate, and the low test scores and low performances and the dropout and the lack of high school graduation, all kind of related to the community environment, the home environment, and the expectation of a system that a kid coming from an apartment that's dilapidated, that there's mold growing out of a ceiling, that the ceiling is falling down, that there's mice running around, there's roaches, that there's possibly even some, radon or asbestos in the home, that their parent or parents are working a job that barely pays, $11 an hour. They can't pay so like there's all these social factors. And then we send that kid off into a classroom and say, good luck, swim. And I realized I can only do but so much on the school board to affect those social circumstances in the community. I always say, people are quick to blame the school district for every problem, but the school district isn't in charge of inadequate lighting on the way to school. The school district isn't in charge of the dilapidated housing stock. The school district isn't in charge of the lack of livable wage jobs. That's on the city. So that's why I decided, I had already mingled in the city a little bit just with my activism, fighting for different development issues and such. But even there, I saw a limitation where I'm on the outside. I can protest as much as I want. I can attend city council meetings as a member of the public as much as I want. I can organize as much as I want. But if I don't have a seat at the table, how much can I actually get accomplished? So I decided to take my skills and the experiences I gained on the school board and in the community, and I figured the combination of both of them would be perfect for a position on city council where I could actually put policies in place to help the school district.
And what were some of the things when you first came? Well, geez, I mean, everything's changed so much. You first were on city council in 2019, correct? Yep. What because I was just saying, what were the issues then? Like I forget this whole year happened where we've all been in our homes, and it has been different for other people. But what were some of the things when you came onto city council that were the most important issues to you at that time in 2019? Have they changed at all?
Right. So the most important issue to me when I first got on was homelessness. Now, despite COVID, when I first got on, within my first 2 months, I was able to do something. That's because I started early. So I got elected in November 2019. I didn't get sworn in until January 2020. So what I did, I didn't know COVID was going to happen, but I knew, because I am a community organizer, I know the importance of being prepared and being extra organized. So I met with some folks in the city. I met with some CEOs of different nonprofits that help the unsheltered community, and I asked them if I were to form a commission on homelessness, would you serve? So I got people lined up. People who are, again, CEOs, people who are serving soup, and then people who are sleeping in tents. I got them all to agree, even before I got sworn in, that they would serve on this commission. And then I linked up with Mike Canlin, who is the city clerk, who I also already had a relationship with because of my activism. And I got him to kind of show me how city council goes about enacting an ordinance. So I would know the ropes once I got there. I wouldn't be behind the 8 ball. So when I got there, I already had the ordinance. I already had everything ready to roll. That's why it took 2 months, because it was just a matter of introducing it. It was just a matter of getting public comment, getting my colleagues on council to weigh in, and then boom, passing it.
Do you find that fascinating at all? Like, does anybody else go, I mean, I'm not trying to, I think it's fascinating that you're like, hey, I'm going to Google, how do we do this? And then I'm going to make it a reality. I don't know. I just think that's fantastic that, because there's like, again, there's people who just would want to do this for a while and they just don't, because
the thing is, though, I mean, for me, like, this isn't about, how do I say this? This is about people's lives. Like, for me, politics is it's about people. And when you look in the eyes of someone who is struggling, when you look in the eyes of a young person and you see yourself in that young person, how can you do anything but try to do something? Like, I was in a position on school board where I could elevate the voices of people that traditionally did not have their voices elevated. And then school board enabled me to learn about, like, the social determinants of health. I never heard of that phrase before, but being on school board, I was able to connect with leaders in the healthcare industry and learn about social determinants of health. And then that's when I realized I can affect the social determinants of health on school board. And so, I mean, how can you have all this knowledge, have access to all these people and opportunities, and not use that to actually help people when you're right in front of them and they are struggling? I don't get how someone couldn't help.
Right. And is that something that you feel, I mean, you're running for mayor, like, it's clearly, you feel like now's the time. Do you feel like now's the time for change like this? Like, why wait longer? Like, has leadership been ineffective for some of these issues that you're talking about with economic justice, housing, and public safety?
Right. I mean, so I would say that what we've been lacking for far too long in Allentown is someone who actually knows how the policies that are made up at the top translate down into the community. That's what we've been lacking. We've had numerous commissions and boards and task force, but if they're made up of folks that are, sitting in boardrooms and like, they don't know how the decisions that they're making actually affect people who have to live with those decisions. So, I mean, making that decision to run for mayor was, I looked at my professional experience as a teacher, as an outreach worker. That equips me with the ability to just know what's really going on in everyday people's lives. And then I looked at my experience as a politician, knowing how to get policies passed based on my own experiences and those in the community. And then, looking at my own personal life. I mean, I've experienced some of the same things that people in Allentown are. I've lived in dilapidated housing. I've been homeless. Like I've, worked out at a warehouse and worked 12-hour shifts and rode the bus for 2 hours. Like I've lived the life that many people in Allentown live. And to combine all of those aspects into an executive level position in Allentown, yeah, this is the time. I feel like people are looking for something different. They're looking for someone who can unite, who has a history of bringing different people together, people who are sleeping in tents with people who are running companies. That's what people want. And those are the skills that I have. And I already have plans on, who's going to be serving on transition committees and who's going to be, I have a team. I have a team of experts experts from economic consultants to housing consultants, to people who have worked in cities that have undergone police reform. So it's not just me. Yes, I bring my skills and experience, but I bring with me a team, I bring with me plans, and I bring with me leadership.
Sure. I mentioned in the beginning, you talked about the newspaper article that just came out where, again, it was written in a way where you were standing up for people who were in dilapidated housing, for lack of a better term, maybe living in places owned by slumlords. Is that to you, standing up for the people who are living in those areas of Allentown that maybe don't necessarily get the representation that you feel they should? Is that important to you?
Oh, very important, very important. And it's also important to understand that the inadequate quality of housing, it doesn't just affect those who are living in that housing, it affects us as an entire city. If the quality of life in the first ward is lacking, that's going to trickle out and that's going to have ripple effects for the entire city. My success, my well-being is tied to my neighbors. My neighbors is tied to someone in the West End. The West End's tied to the South Side and East Side. We're all connected. We can't have parts of this city that are struggling and expect to grow and to thrive as a city. That's not going to happen. So 100%. What's funny though, you mentioned yesterday, all yesterday was supposed to be was a press conference about a bill that Candida has been trying to get this bill introduced for a while. And now we have, a unified council behind this bill. And it was literally just supposed to be a press conference about introducing Candida's bill, and we were all, just standing with Candida, showing her that we support her and her efforts, and then it turned into something else.
Right.
So
yeah, what are you gonna do? It was reading it. I'm just like, wow, you could really sense like you were there. I'll make sure that we link to it in the show notes for anyone who wants to read it, but it's worth the time. Do you think? Because again, it seems like when you set your mind to something, it seems to get done. Do you feel like you're a little underestimated? I read there was another article in the paper about, is it time for a female mayor? And I saw some of your supporters get a little upset because I don't think they mentioned you, and why would you underestimate somebody who you decided to get on city council and made that happen? And it seems like you have a lot of community support. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's up to the voters. I know I have an awesome team. We have a relevant, compelling message, and it's up to the voters. If the voters are ready for a mayor who looks like this, a mayor that has bold, progressive policies that will help them and their neighbors, then I'll be your next mayor. And I'm confident that the voters are ready for that. I've been pounding the blocks, pounding the pavement from the West End, South Side, and Center City, East Side as well. And everywhere I go, people are ready for change. They're ready for something different. They're sick of the status quo because the status quo isn't helping someone out at 30th and Highland, and the status quo also isn't helping someone at 4th and Allen. And I represent that change.
And now we're going to move into, we're going to get away from politics for a little bit.
Okay.
So we're going to take the politics hat off. Because
Gotcha.
I think, and again, all of your links, everything is in the show notes for anyone who wants to learn more about you and your story, and everything's there. I'm curious because I don't want to compare myself to you, but I came to college. I went to Moravian and I stuck around in Bethlehem, kind of the same way you came from out of the area and went to Allentown and stuck around. What was it for you? Like clearly you were involved in the community and you meet people you like, but there's got to be something about where you live that keeps you there. So why do you stay in Allentown?
Yeah, so it's really it's several reasons. I love that Allentown has people from all over the world. I just think that's incredibly awesome that someone from Egypt decides to relocate in Allentown, and that I have the opportunity to meet that person, to get to learn about their life. So it has that diversity that I love and that fuels me. And then also, the park system. I love the parks. Cedar Beach and Jordan. And when I first got here, I was introduced to my godchildren, and we would go down to Jordan Park like all day and just hang out. And it was just, it's a beautiful city, and the people, I guess that's what I really just love about Allentown. It's the people. There's a certain authenticity to the folks in Allentown, and beauty. As I walk around, I see beauty in things that maybe some people don't find beautiful. Like there's on North Fifth Street, must be the 700 block, or there is a home, an apartment that every holiday they put decorations up, and they have a little patch of grass out back, and they'll hang Valentine's decorations up, they'll hang Easter. And so every major holiday they will decorate, and to me that shows pride. To me that shows a sense of community. The senior citizen who maybe all they have is a porch, a stoop, but they'll take a pot and they'll put an artificial flower in that pot just to try to beautify the neighborhood up. And that's what I see in Allentown. I see people who try to make the most with what they have. People who are working 2-3 jobs, people who are coming in sweaty to parent-teacher conferences because they just finished their third job, or their job at a warehouse. That's what I see. And I don't know, I just fell in love with the vibe. It just has a good vibe here. And the people are the reason why the vibe is so awesome.
I said I was going to stop talking about politics. I kind of am. But I'm curious, as a community activist and organizer over the last year, doing what we're talking now on over the internet, has that been more difficult, or have you found it, maybe you've learned some things from having to be more virtual in the last year?
Yeah, so I would say I have been able to engage with people that wouldn't necessarily show up at a meeting. Like as a community organizer, you hold a lot of meetings in basements of churches. And I've been able to connect with people who just weren't able or didn't feel comfortable with showing up to the meeting in a basement of a church or on a street corner.
Right.
So in that way, it's been kind of helpful. And even like from a city council perspective, we've received, I'd say, more interaction with members of the public and to some capacity. And then listening to the county commissioner meetings, they're flooded with community participation because of this virtual world that we're in. And I remember when during the peak of the pandemic, it was still possible to kind of get out there. You just had to, be cognizant of the fact that there's a deadly virus. I was still out there. Like I went down to the soup kitchen down in Alliance Hall just to see how they were adapting, and seeing if I could help out at all. And there were still organizations that, despite the virus, they were plugging away. And that's the other thing I love about Allentown. Like, the genuine desire to want to help and to serve. Again,
Mhm.
we've got a deadly virus going around, and you've got volunteers who are giving up their time and risking their lives to hand out to-go bags to people who are sleeping on the street struggling. Like, that's Allentown, and
And we don't,
love that.
it's unfortunate we don't hear about that as much as we should. And you could blame whoever. It's just sometimes, and that's the kind of person who does that. They're not ringing a bell asking for someone to come down and take pictures of them. They're doing it because they feel like it's the right thing to do.
Right, right.
So it's kind of unfortunate we don't get to tell those stories as much.
Yeah, we really don't. We really don't. And most neighborhoods in Allentown I have been in are just, it's just regular working class people. They're picking up the trash when they can. Most neighborhoods have that senior citizen who goes out and they pick up the trash. And then, like on my block, the guys across the street, they park their car in the back and of my property, and in exchange they do little small repairs on my car. We have the guy on my block, he shovels the entire block for free. I mean, so that's Allentown. Again, those stories don't get told.
It's fun. Well, I'm in Bethlehem, but there's a woman, our neighbor, who lives across the street. She's kind of like the grandma for the block.
Yeah,
I don't have to worry. Like, I'll handle stuff if she needs help, but if there's anything going on in the block that I need to know about, she'll come and tell me, and you let me know. I'll take care of it. So it's fun to see that, especially the last year. I feel, even though in my personal community, I guess like on my block, I feel like we've gotten to know each other more, even though we haven't been able to really spend time within 6 feet of each other. But
right.
So as we kind of finish up here, I'm curious how. Again, you're running for the mayor of the third largest city in Pennsylvania, a major city. Yes. Billy Joel sang about it, right? But, how has it been going, and what do you see as we're going through to May 18th? And, I just kind of want to, if you want to talk to people who are listening and how they can support you and whatnot, you go ahead.
Sure. So thank you for this opportunity. So I would say from here on out, it's all about reaching voters through the internet, reaching voters through door-to-door phone calls, texting. We'll be doing it all. We are a grassroots campaign. We are funded by the people, not politicians and developers and a bunch of people who are well connected. Right. So we'll continue to do our grassroots organizing. If people want to check out my website, CeCeGerlach.com. If they want to check out my social media, I have Facebook, I have Twitter, I have an Instagram, so you can check me out on there. You can call me, 484-597-0354. That's my cell phone.
You did it. I didn't do it.
There it is. And if you have any questions, feel free, just ask me. As you said, I've been elected to office for 10 years. My record is public. Anything I've done, it's been out there. I've been pretty vocal with where I stand on issues. And sometimes it's not possible to cover every detail in one article. So if you have questions about where I've stood on something, concerns about where I've stood on something, give me a call. I'm an open book. I will clearly, without any kind of political mumbo jumbo, any rhetoric, I will tell you exactly how I feel on an issue, and you might not like it, but you're going to have the truth. So if anyone wants to get involved on my campaign, definitely visit my websites. I have the link where you can just sign up and you'll receive emails. Also, of course, if you'd like to make a donation and support financially, you can do that on the website as well. I look forward to getting out there and speaking with more voters and speaking with stakeholders and earning everyone's support.
Well, I want to genuinely thank you for coming on. It was, again, you're one of those people. It's fun that I've read about you. I've seen you in other meetings here and there. So it's fun to talk to you one-on-one. And it's not like I admire you for what you're doing. You're doing it for the right reasons. But if you look at it from the outside, it's really amazing how you're saying that's a problem. This is how we have to fix this issue. Okay, well, let's figure it out and let's go toward it. And I find that refreshing and a lot of fun. I mean, fun in a energetic way, and I wish you all the best. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if there's any young person that thinks they, if they're seeing a problem, I say fix it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
All right. Stay put for a second. I just want to tell everybody, thank you very much. And again, all the links and everything in there, you don't have to memorize it. They're all in the show notes. So just take a look. And thank you very much. Thank you, Ce-Ce.
All right. Thank you.